Well, howdy, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for August 19th, 2023. Every week, I take a look at some news stories, articles, and headlines from across our great state, give you a glimpse of what's going on, and hopefully provide some valuable information that you can use as part of the Liberty community here in Colorado. Well, anyways, pour yourself a cup of coffee and let's see what's been happening here in Colorado. First article I'd like to talk about this week is from coloradosun.com. August 17th, 2023. Xcel will raise electric bills again next month. A quarter of the hike will cover closing coal-fired power plants. So unfortunately, the cost of living seems to be increasing in Colorado. Nearly every week we see extra costs, extra fees, extra taxes being piled on already strained consumers, taxpayers, and people here in Colorado. And unfortunately, we're going to see a little bit more. Now, it only is only $4 on average for the residential bill, but however, it adds up. These costs continue to rise. Your gas for your car, your electricity for your home, your groceries, everything is getting more expensive. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Xcel Energy is a state monopoly. Really, we need a free market in energy production in order to lower costs, provide better services to the people of Colorado. Electricity bills for 1.6 million Colorado customers of Xcel Energy will rise 4.4%, about $3.99 on the average residential bill, on September 1st under a settlement approved Wednesday by the State Public Utilities Commission. In 2022, Xcel Energy, Colorado's largest electricity supplier, filed for a $312 million rate hike. But under the settlement, it will get an increase of $96 million. So Xcel Energy wanted triple of what the Public Utilities Commission is allowing them to do. That follows a $182 million rate increase in April 2022, which raised the average electricity bill $5.24 a month, or about 6.4%. Wow. So prices keep continuing to go up. And of course, the second half of this headline or article here talks a little bit about that these coal-fired power plants are being shut down. So there's big costs associated with that. Comanche 3 in Pueblo is being shuttered in 2031. I can only expect that electricity prices are going to increase when these coal-powered plants get shut down. As people know, that's one of the least expensive ways to produce electricity. So the green agenda, of course, is going to end up costing Colorado a lot. So take a look at that if you're interested. And let's move on, see what else we got going on this week. Thought this was interesting. For a long time, I've been talking about how Colorado's not lost. Colorado is not entirely a blue state. You get out of the Denver metro area, and Republicans have a foothold at a lot of places across the state. And I thought this was really interesting to see some of the strategies, some of the places that Republicans can really work, and people in the Liberty community maybe should be volunteering and supporting some of these candidates to help kind of even the odds and put more Republicans in office to take away some of that Democratic power that we're seeing across the state. So, ColoradoPolitics.com, Dave Williams reveals the Colorado GOP's most wanted Democrats. Republicans plan to target 11 Democratic incumbents in 2024 in bid to regain ground lost in recent elections. Now, these 11, I do think, are really key seats, and I think they're very doable. It's not like state GOP Chairman Dave Williams revealed any deep, dark secrets when he announced which Democrats the Republicans intend to target next year. Anyone could have compiled a similar list by reviewing the results of the last election, though it's unusual to outline a detailed strategy while the opposition is watching. So, of course, the Republican Party of Colorado had this August 5th special meeting of the Central Committee and went over a lot of different issues that went down there, but let's get to looking forward to 2024. We have suffered devastating losses, and if we're going to come out of this, it's going to be because we're working together, Williams said, alluding to the string of thumping losses Republicans have suffered in Colorado in the last 3 general elections. Since 2018, Democrats have swept every statewide office, won 5 of the state's 8 congressional seats, and taken historic majorities in both chambers of the legislature, leaving the GOP with less power than it's held in nearly 100 years. What we've already achieved towards building winning coalitions is making a historic deal with Libertarians to stop them from running spoiler candidates in our competitive races, Williams said, describing a pact he inked with the state's largest minor political party earlier this summer. Williams told Republicans in Castle Rock that he's on the verge of expanding the plan. I'm also pleased to announce that we're very close to making a similar deal with the American Constitution Party, he said to Cheers, referring to the state's fourth largest minority political party. Williams calls the Freedom Initiative. The goal of the Freedom Initiative is to compete in at least 10 targeted districts with conservative candidates who share our free market, free people, and limited government values. I thought it best to share with you the targeted seats we are making a top priority. This is the Colorado GOP's most wanted Democrats. At the center of the screen was U.S. Representative Congresswoman Yadari Caraveo, the Thornton pediatrician, who won election last year by just under 1% percentage point in the 8th Congressional District. Move ahead a little bit here. Let's look at the list here. The legislators on Williams' target list included several who won with polarities, oh gosh, in three-way races against a Republican and a Libertarian, though a few won their last elections by relatively wide margins. State Senator Chris Kolker, Democrat out of Centennial in Senate District 16, won his first term in 2020 by 11 points, but will be running next year in a redrawn district that's less favorable for Democrats. So, of course, after the most recent census, this will be the first year we'll see a lot of these senators, these state senators, be facing a reelection bid in newly drawn districts, providing a new opportunity to change the political landscape there. State Representative Stephanie Vigil, Democrat out of Colorado Springs. Gosh, she is one of the worst out there. In House District 16, won by about 2 points in a race where the Libertarian got slightly more votes than Vigil's winning margin. State Representative Mark Snyder, Democrat out of Manitou Springs in House District 18, won by more than 8 points, while the Libertarian got about 3%. State Representative Jennifer Parenti, Democrat in Longmont in House District 19, beat a Republican incumbent by just over 3 points, with the Libertarian getting nearly as many votes as her margin. State Representative Tammy Story, in Democrat in Evergreen, House District 25, beat a Republican incumbent by just over 1 point. State Rep Megan Lukens, Democrat in Eagle, House District 26, won by 7 points. State Rep Bob Marshall, Democrat at Highlands Ranch, House District 43, beat the Republican by just under 1 point. State Rep Mary Young, Democrat in Greeley, House District 50, won by nearly 2 points. State Rep Elizabeth Lesko, Democrat in Glenwood Springs, House District 57, won more than 7 points. State Rep Eliza Hamrick, Democrat in Centennial, House District 61, won by about 3 points, with the Libertarians taking about 2%. So definitely an issue we'll be talking about going into 2024. I think there's a historic opportunity here for Republicans to make some serious gains. And I really like the focus on these more local level races, specifically the state house, state senate. I really think that's where the Republican Party should be focusing, is at the state level. You know, my message to any Republicans out there, don't spend a lot of time campaigning on the presidential race. There's no way they're going to win in Colorado, the Republican candidate for president, right? But hey, shifting 5, 6 state legislative seats could have a profound impact on Colorado's politics. So pretty interesting, something we'll continue to be talking about, and I'm really glad to see and excited of what Dave Williams is doing with the Republican Party here in Colorado. Let's go ahead and move on. So that's next year's election we just talked about. This year, we have a ballot initiative that is one of the most controversial and would be one of the most devastating ballot initiatives we've seen in recent history. This is from coloradopolitics.com, August 17th, 2023. Proposition HH to cost each taxpayer $5,000 in TABOR refunds over a decade, study says. Wow. So Proposition HH, if passed, is going to take money away from you and your family. I mean, that's $5,000 per taxpayer. So you got a husband and wife in a household. You got some kids who are getting to working age. That's $5,000 each you're going to lose over the next 10 years if Proposition HH passes. Taxpayers and renters in particular will lose thousands of dollars in TABOR refunds over the next decade if voters approve Proposition HH in November, a study released this week says. The study from the Common Sense Institute comes on the heels of a poll from Magellan Strategies that said the more voters know about the property tax measure, the less they like it. Wow. The study was conducted by CSI Vice President Chris Brown and former Republican Representative Lang Sias, who ran for lieutenant governor on the GOP ticket in 2018 and for state treasurer in 2020. It found any property tax reduction would be outweighed by long-term state tax increases. Should Prop HH pass, the increase in property taxes will be slightly less, but taxpayers will lose $5,119 in TABOR refunds over the next 10 years. Renters will be the biggest losers, the study says. They won't see any benefit from TABOR refunds that would be redirected to property owners and intended to slow the increase in property taxes. If Proposition HH is approved by voters, property taxes will still go up, and that increase is likely to be passed along to renters, doubling the negative effect of the measure on renters. Yes, Proposition HH is terrible, a horrible hoax, as my friend Natalie calls it. But it would be devastating to people in Colorado who are going to get $500 a year based on their taxpayer bill of rights refunds. So absolutely terrible. HH needs to be defeated, and don't be fooled by HH and the people who say it's going to lower property tax. You'll find out in a new video I have with Natalie Menten coming out on Monday, showing that that is not the case. That actually local governments can easily circumvent this property tax cap and actually increase taxes with as little as one public meeting. So absolutely terrible. There is no real relief being provided through Proposition HH. The only reason Proposition HH is on the ballot is to take away our taxpayer bill of rights refunds. Let me repeat that. The only reason Proposition HH is on the November ballot is to take away our tax refund money. Government can keep it. No. Vote no on Proposition HH. Check out that article for more information. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on in Douglas County. Douglas County News Press.net. Guest column, say no to even higher property taxes. Now, even if you don't live in Douglas County, this is an important issue because we're seeing these property tax initiatives to increase taxes on homeowners in Colorado in many different communities across the state. So this is from Michael Fields, the guy who lives in Douglas County. It looks like also senior advisor to Advance Colorado Action. Advance Colorado. Let's take out the article here on from Thursday, August 17th. Whether you support or oppose the mill levy override that the Douglas County School District recently approved for the ballot, we should all agree that taxpayer money should never be used to promote a proposed ballot measure. Now, I'm glad he's talking about this because this is coming up all over the state of Colorado. Seems to be happening every year. Unfortunately, over $140,000 has already been paid this year to a consulting firm to campaign manage and set messaging for this tax increase. The agreement with DCSD says the consulting firm will, quote, build and launch a winning campaign, end quote, which includes everything from focus groups to polling. On top of that, DCSD has spent even more taxpayer money on paid media efforts for this mill levy override MLO. So you have your tax dollars being spent by the local school district to try and convince you, the taxpayer, to pay more taxes. I mean, this is a total scam if there is one. I became aware of these tactics when the last MLO was on the ballot and my kids came home with flyers about it in their Thursday folders. Oh my gosh. So they're telling the kids to convince their parents to vote for a ballot tax increase. Wow. We've also received emails highlighting why DCSD needs to pass a tax increase. The only reason the district has our emails to begin with is because our kids go to the local public school. Imagine if state politicians used emails from our tax returns to send out positive information about Proposition HH, or if they used taxpayer money to send mailers out with their own facts about a tax increase. People would rightfully be outraged. Wow. So that's something that needs to end. Seeing taxpayer money, in this case, at least $140,000 so far, being spent to convince citizens to pay more taxes. Government entities should not be involved in electioneering campaigns. Right? I mean, that seems pretty straightforward, but unfortunately that's happening. So check that article out, especially if you live in Douglas County. But that issue is something that's affecting everybody in Colorado. Moving on here. So we talked a little bit previously about Dave Williams' plan for the 2024 elections, some of the top targets for the Democratic opponents they're going after. And part of what he talked about, something I've been talking about as well, is the pledge between the Libertarian Party of Colorado and the Republican Party of Colorado as well, to avoid spoilers, to, hey, if we both support candidates that agree fundamentally on some of these issues, maybe we can go ahead and not work in opposition to each other, right? The Democrats have such a stranglehold on our state government that we got to stop fighting each other if we have any chance of trying to defeat them. So this is from coloradopolitics.com, August 18th, 2023. Colorado Libertarians release pledges Republicans can sign to avoid spoilers in competitive races. The Colorado Libertarian Party is asking Republicans who want a third party to stand down in competitive congressional districts next year to sign a pledge agreeing to oppose American defense aid to Ukraine and work to abolish U.S. intelligence agencies. Now, that is some bold messaging, and that is pretty exciting. It's nice to see the Libertarian Party really coming out in opposition to all of our tax money going over to Europe, and then also the fact that recognizing that these intelligence agencies, such as the FBI and the CIA, are some of the biggest threats we have as being just the people of America, right? These three-letter agencies are some of the biggest threats out there to our freedom, to our pocketbooks, to our way of life, really. Republicans running for toss-up legislative seats can avoid worrying about potentially splitting the vote with Libertarian nominees if they agree to vote to eliminate the state income tax, heck yeah, and support the legal right of Coloradans to purchase unpasteurized milk. Awesome. I mean, who could be against that? We got a great agricultural industry here in Colorado. Republicans should be on board with raw milk sales, and eliminating the state income tax is not even that bold. In fact, you have Jared Polis wanting to eliminate the state income tax. So those should be pretty easy issues for Republicans here in Colorado to jump on board with. The state Libertarians this month released lengthy pledges for Republican candidates to sign as part of a plan announced in June between the Colorado GOP and the state Libertarian Party. The unprecedented pact is part of the Colorado Republicans' attempts to regain ground the party has lost in recent elections. Yep, we know about that. The Libertarian Party is the largest of Colorado's officially recognized minor political parties, with 39,875 active registered members as of August 1st. Although the party's members account for just over 1% of the state's 3.8 million active voters, its nominees routinely garner 2 to 3% of the vote, which sometimes exceeds the difference between the two major party candidates in tight races. Awesome. Here's a quote from Hannah Goodman, the Libertarian Party chair of Colorado. Quote, "If the Republican Party runs candidates who support individual liberties, we will not run competing candidates in those races." That's where the pledge comes in. If you were to ask the average Republican voter what issues they believe the GOP stood for, most of them would list truly libertarian values. This could be support of the Second Amendment, lower taxes, parental rights, and school choice, to name a few. However, many elected Republicans fall short or abandon these values entirely. She added that the Libertarians intend to run candidates against any Republican candidates who do not sign this pledge. Awesome. So you can read the whole pledge here on the website on this article. Pretty interesting. Good to see that, here we're talking about lowering mill levy rates to provide real property tax relief, promoting educational freedom, helping parents protect the rights of their children, expanding the Colorado Open Records Act. I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? I think that's a very exciting. Civil asset forfeiture, defend the guard, food freedom, as we saw, voting against tax increases, direct ballot access by citizen initiative. Very important things, important issues that the Libertarian Party of Colorado should have no problem getting Republicans to jump on board with. Here's what Dave Williams says. Their questionnaire represents what they were willing to have us align with them on, not to run spoiler candidates, Williams told Colorado Politics in a text message. The ball is in our court now, and I don't think any serious candidate seeking our nomination in any competitive seat can ignore this. So pretty cool. You got to check that out. Pretty exciting day here in Colorado. It's really neat to see the Libertarian Party having influence on the Republican Party and hopefully on the Democratic Party as well. People in Colorado want to be free. We love freedom, and let's hope that this trend continues where we have more candidates willing to stand up against the status quo and stand up for the rights of just everyday citizens. A couple more articles here. Let's take a look. From the Gazette.com. Editorial, reining in Colorado's legislative overreach. Let's go ahead and zoom in here, make it a little easier to see. Gazette Editorial Board, August 15th, 2023. Our legislature fears and loathes the right of Colorado voters to weigh in on policy directly through the ballot box. Lawmakers have done their level best over the years to monkey wrench that right, seeing it as an intolerable end run on their own power. Just last week, we applauded a lawsuit by the advocacy group Advance Colorado against one such devious attempt, enacted by the legislature in 2021. It hobbled voters' right to petition tax cut proposals onto a statewide ballot. A day after the suit was filed in federal court, a state district court judge on Wednesday refused to dismiss another lawsuit by Advance Colorado, Americans for Prosperity, and others, also defending the right of rank and file voters to have a direct say in policy making. This time it involved a massive transportation funding measure that was passed into law 2 years ago, but that the plaintiffs say should have gone to voters first. The measure, which Governor Jared Polis signed into law, was a $5.4 billion 10-year plan to build roads and bridges, create electric vehicle charging stations, boost mass transit, and mitigate air pollution. Its funding came primarily from the assessment of an array of complicated and controversial new fees that came across a lot like taxes. So, unfortunately, we've seen this happen quite a bit where these state legislators know they can't raise taxes on the people without a vote. That's thanks to the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. So they call them fees. They say this isn't a tax, it's a fee. We can go ahead and pass that. But it's good to see that there's lawsuits saying that you're wrong. It's a tax. And if it's a tax, it needs to be voted on by the people. That is why TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, is so valuable. As reported by Colorado Politics, the lawsuits takes issue with the Omnibus Transportation Plan in part because it established 4 state enterprises and modified a 5th, though through which it channels the revenue from the new fees to assorted transportation projects. The plaintiffs say that provision not only violates the state constitution's single subject requirement, but was also an attempt to bypass Proposition 117, a 2020 ballot measure that requires voter approval for any new fees for enterprises that generate more than $100 million in revenue in the first 5 years. So this is some of the great work that Advance Colorado has been doing, as well as Americans for Prosperity. It's holding our government accountable. These politicians think they can get away with everything. They think they can violate our state constitution. They think our money belongs to them. And it's good to see people standing up and saying it doesn't. So check that article out if you're interested. Really good to see some pushback against our out of control state legislature. From the Great Complete Colorado, page 2, some original reporting here. An article from my friend Natalie Menten. How to weigh in on local TABOR measures for the 2023 ballot from August 17th, 2023. So talking about the Taxpayer Bill of Rights again, it does so much for the people of Colorado. It's amazing. One great, though lesser known benefit provided by the Colorado Taxpayers Bill of Rights, TABOR, is the local ballot issue notice. This guide is sent by mail at least 30 days before the election to all households with 1 or more registered voters. The ballot issue notice includes content and details about upcoming ballot measures that increase taxes, add debt, or suspend TABOR revenue limits. It includes a section where registered voters have the opportunity to submit for or against comments up to 500 words each. You should know that there are 2 types of TABOR ballot issue notices. One notice is for the statewide elections and commonly referred to as the Blue Book. The notice discussed here is for elections held by local governments, such as a city, town, school district, or special taxing district. You could potentially get more than one of these notices in the mail. Several years back, it was discovered that out of some 300 local tax issues throughout the state during a ballot year, only 15 had the taxpayer's voice printed on a ballot issue notice. Wow, that's only 5%. You can make a big difference and amplify your voice by being an author of the next ballot issue notice where you live. Considering that you reach thousands of voters, submitting comments in the TABOR notice costs almost nothing and takes relatively little time and energy. What follows is an explanation of how to participate in the local ballot issue for or against comment process. As in so much of government bureaucracy, instructions must be followed with no room for alteration. The deadline for this year is Friday, September 23rd, no later than noon, to have your comments included in your local TABOR notice. So you got to read that. I mean, this is one of the biggest impacts you can have for almost no cost, as Natalie mentions in her article. This gray book is sent to every household in your area talking about tax increases, and you have an opportunity to have your voice heard, say why it's a bad idea, or if there's something you agree with, say why it's a good idea. It's truly a great tool that people in the Liberty community need to jump on. So read this article. Natalie goes through how to do it, how to have a voice. Pretty exciting stuff. So let's move on. CPR news. So this huge new assessment scores came out for Colorado schools, of course, right in time for the new school year starting here in August. And unfortunately, it doesn't look great. It does not look great at all. It's hard to imagine why, right? Record funding for schools in recent years. Teachers unions and the bureaucracy have been getting bigger and bigger, more and more money. So why are students' test scores doing so poorly? Why are students not learning? Why are they below their average reading level or math level? Colorado's measure of academic success scores are out. Here's how students did. August 17th, 2023. The damage the pandemic inflicted upon children was deep, and it will take time to dig out. Wow. How about the damage the government response, the government lockdowns, the government shutdowns of society inflicted upon children and the rest of society? That will take a long time to dig out. Standardized test scores, known as the Colorado Measure of Academic Success, or CMAS, show some improvements over last year, but learning deficits continue. Many students still aren't at the academic levels they were before, according to newly released results. Most of the data across grades was a mixed bag. Though officials said last school year had far fewer disruptions, schools had more unfilled positions, and some students and educators are still experiencing social and personal challenges. It's the second year since the pandemic that Colorado students took a normal set of standardized tests. Tests were canceled in 2020 and modified in 2021. Third through eighth graders took the tests in English and math, while fifth, eighth, and 11th graders took the science tests. Well, let's take a look at some of these results here. Enough words with them. Overall, English scores bumped up very slightly over last year, with almost 43% of children reading and writing on grade level. Wow. So 43% of children are reading and writing on grade level. That means 57% of students, of children, are not at their grade level in reading and writing. Wow. Here we go. Percentage of Colorado students who meet or met or exceeded expectations in English. So 2019, 2022, 2023. Look at that. It's not even half. It's not even half of the students are meeting their expectations or exceeding them in English. I mean, what does that say for the future, people? There's articles out there about this competency crisis we're facing, where you have uneducated people in positions of power, uneducated people who don't know what to do, but are somehow decision making for big companies or other things. I mean, is this a sign of things to come? Or is this just an example of the failures of government-run schools? There's a reason parents aren't sending their kids back to some of these schools. There's a reason parents want better choices and better options for their kids because they have a 50-50 chance of not even being at the expectations, the grade level where they should be, just by going to these schools. I mean, it's half the kids if your kids go to school, half the kids in their class are not necessarily going to be proficient in some of these English or math. Wow. So math's a little better, it looks like, at least for third graders. Percentage of Colorado students who met or exceeded expectations in math. Wow. Look at that. Seventh graders, 26%. And 74% of seventh graders in Colorado are not at their level in math. That is a frightening statistic. And come on, I mean, these government schools, we got to be more honest with the failures of government schools. They have enough money, they have more money than they've ever had, and scores are terrible. Wow. So of course this article goes in and blames a whole host of things. Of course, COVID is the number one example of why that this is happening. But I think there's some deeper issues going on. When schools have become focused on indoctrinating children to social agenda rather than teaching them English or math, it's not too surprising, right? This article breaks down by gender as well, and pretty interesting stuff. And of course, looking at it by race. So take a look at this article if you're interested. It's pretty sad stuff to see that underperforming students is the norm in Colorado. Reading, writing, math. Wow. Teach your kids yourself. Do not count on the government schools to do it. Let's go ahead and move on here. Kind of a follow-up article from the Denver Gazette this week, denvergazette.com, August 17th, 2023. Colorado Test Scores 2023. Look up your school or district. So I wanted to include this for any parents out there or anybody maybe who has grandkids, people in schools. You can actually sort through this chart on this article. All these links are found at freestatecolorado.com to search through the schools. You can see all of the statewide ranks, who's the best, who's the worst. I mean, some of these schools, it's unbelievable. 6% English language proficiency. I mean, you got to check this out. See how bad your schools are doing for your children. So that's the reason why I wanted to include this article is this table. You can search for schools, 77 pages of data to go through and see what's going on in your local community. These are our future leaders, supposedly. All right. Sticking on school, it is that back to school time. So, one more school article, and that's from thedailycaller.com. This is a Colorado issue from August 16th, 2023. Catholic preschools sue state officials over law barring them from funding program. Let's see. Two Catholic preschools filed a lawsuit Wednesday against Colorado Department of Early Education officials for allegedly excluding them from being accepted into the state's universal preschool program due to their traditional religious beliefs. St. Mary Catholic Parish and St. Bernadette Catholic Parish prioritize Catholic families during the admissions process and require their staff to adhere to principles in line with the faith of the Church on issues such as marriage and human sexuality, according to the lawsuit. In Colorado, however, the program does not allow religious schools to get access to the funding program if they discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, prompting the schools in the Archdiocese of Denver to sue with the Becket Religious Liberty Fund, arguing that the law violates the First Amendment. So interesting stuff here. We've seen some of the schools do so poorly with their students. And of course, the state government says, hey, you want to be part of this new, much touted universal preschool program? Well, you just got to give up your religious beliefs, and you can be part of this program. Let's see. Our preschool exists to help kids harness the skills they need to flourish and grow into individuals prepared to serve others in hope, joy, and love. Tracy Sewell, Director of Development in Preschool at St. Mary Catholic School, sent a press release. We are called to offer this ministry to every parent who wants to provide their child with an authentic Catholic education. In 2022, the state began accepting applications for its universal preschool program, which allows low-income families who are approved to be granted funding for half-day, 15 hours of state-funded voluntary preschool or 10-hour programs if a particular school offers it, according to the department's website. So pretty interesting there. Mixed feelings about this. Of course, I hate to see the state government go after some of these religious schools or tell them they can't practice their faith. But at the same time, getting taxpayer funds, I don't think that, taxpayer funds should be really spent on any of these programs. So we should just let the market decide, let parents make their own decisions about where they want to send kids and get the government out of the way. Let's go ahead and move on. Last article of the week, Complete Colorado from John Caldara of the Independence Institute. Progressive policies behind Colorado's rising restaurant inflation. I'm obviously not the only one to notice eating out is getting really expensive, lavish, costly, pricely. Choose your own word. So I wasn't too stunned to find an analysis done by USA Today, which found Colorado to be the first in the nation for restaurant inflation. Yeah, us. The price of getting a meal here is going up faster than anywhere else in the country. That cringe you feel when someone says, hey, you want to go grab a bite? And now has some research to back it up. Though not filling us with the same sense of pride of being first in car thefts, we shouldn't be flabbergasted. Just as inflation is cooling on the national level, with the latest consumer price index coming at 3.2%, USA Today reports Colorado's restaurant inflation clocking in at a mind-blowing 24%. In case you didn't realize it immediately, that also means the tax and tip on top of your meal out is going up 24% as well. Wow. I'm rarely looking for a fancy place to eat. I'm a single father, tight on time, who, like everyone else, doesn't want to cook or clean up and misses having a friendly neighborhood eatery. Sometimes we just want a place like the diner on the TV show Seinfeld, but they're basically outlawed in Colorado. Why are things so much more expensive in Colorado? It's not because of high altitude or 360 days a year of sunshine or our fresh mountain streams. It's because of policy. Elections have consequences, and we have voted to raise the price of eating out by 24% a year. There's no rocket science here, and some of those consequences mean not only can't we afford to go out as often, but a lot of those restaurants, particularly mom and pop owned ones, are going out of business well before their time. And unemployed restaurant workers certainly can't afford to go out either. What policies make restaurant inflation? Governor Jared Polis, under the guise of local control, signed a bill ending the state minimum wage and allowing cities to raise but not lower it. So calling it local control is a fib. It's only a local one-way ratchet. So pretty interesting article. Of course, the fees, the taxes, every little nickel and dime that these mom and pop restaurants have to pay have meant that they have to raise their prices. I mean, they can't afford to stay in business with all these new regulations, all these new costs put on them by our government. So check it out. Good to see John Caldara bringing some levity or humor to the situation. But I want to thank you very much for being here. We'll be back again next week. If you got any news stories or articles you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment on YouTube or on freestatecolorado.com. Well, thank you very much. Hope you have a great weekend and take